topic is Cuba. And Dr. LMadu, I think the last time that we spoke in reference to this, we were talking about some of the medical advantages you indicated, and as a prelude to talk about some of the problems that Cuba might have. But let's say make some additional statements in reference to medicine in Cuba.
Yeah, like I said, Cuba has one of the best medical, systems in the world today. In terms of AIDS, like we were talking about, Cuba exports, one of the best HIV/AIDS vaccines to most of the third world countries. In fact, most of the Latin American countries buy their HIV/AIDS vaccines from Cuba. In terms of percentage of those infected by AIDS, Cuba has probably the lowest, in the whole world. When this HIV/AIDS came to Cuba, Fidel Castro, quarantined the first those who were identified initially, to the island of Pines. They were quarantined. Then he made sure everybody had to be tested and checked out. And then they moved there and started manufacturing, HIV/AIDS vaccines. So that today, countries like Venezuela, Bolivia, you name it, Mozambique, Angola, a lot of them import their HIV/AIDS vaccines from Cuba. In terms of eyesight, Cuba has one of the best. As we speak right now, there are thousands of people from a lot of South American countries sitting in Havana waiting for their eyesight to be corrected. Some, glaucoma and all this. Yes, Cuba has one of the best. So in terms of medicine, they have, achieved a very, very, very big feat in that country. We don't hear much about it.
Not at all. Yeah. No, we don't hear anything about it, as a matter of fact.
When President Carter went to Cuba, he was amazed when he went to the Biotechnology Institute to see what they are doing. So in terms of healthcare system, the Cuban Revolution has accomplished a lot. Their educational facilities, probably one of the best in South America. Education is free in Cuba, from elementary to university. So they have probably the highest literacy rate in the Western Hemisphere, even higher than ours here. Yeah, about 99%.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, about 99.9% literacy rate in Cuba. So that's a gargantuan accomplishment. Now, what are the failures, of the Cuban Revolution? We can say, human rights. In countries, that dictatorships like Cuba is, people don't have the rights to say what they want to say. They don't have the right to publish what they want to. A lot of the newspapers, radio are controlled by the government. The largest newspaper, Gramma, is communist, controlled. People don't have the right to go to wherever they want to, when they want to. You can just say, well, I'm going to the airport, Havana Airport, I'm going to the United States. No, you can just, the government won't allow you to do that. They want to make sure where you're going to and give you a pass to go and come back, So some of those things are the human rights situation. Jobs, you can just get up, say, well, I want to go and change my job. I got to be working at TSU, no more at Fisk. You can't do that. The government controls the economy. About 95, 96, 97% of the economy is government controlled. And that's where we come to one of the most important earth-shattering news about Cuba. When Fidel got sick, he handed over to his brother and a group of those around him. Officially, Raul took over on February 8, last year as president of Cuba. What has happened since then is that they started looking at the economic downturn in the world. And they say, well, no. We have 5.1 million employees in Cuba. That's the government workforce, 5.1. Raul and his advisor said, no, we can't keep this up. There are a lot of people just sitting, eating, not doing anything, but we are paying them.
Just part of the government payroll.
Yeah, the government payroll. This is too much. If we have to survive here, we got to make some dramatic changes. So he announced that 1 million government workers will be laid off.
That's 20% of the workforce.
Exactly about that, and 10% of them will be laid off from now until March 11th next year. They've started already. 500,000 will be laid off from now till March next year. So what they want to do is lay off about this 1 million within a year, and then, have them find jobs in the private sector. So to accomplish that, some of the areas that the government have been controlling,
Okay.
you know, they are relaxing now. You know, you can start your own barber shop, you can start your own barbecue shop, you can start your own, you know, car garages, you can start your own business in your home, all that, in order to absorb these people.
Those workers that have been laid off.
That's correct, because those people who have been laid off are complaining, say, where are we going to get a job from? So they are trying to now create those kind of, you know, private enterprises so that these people can be able to find, you know, jobs in the private sectors. And of course, you know the dangers, you know, when you start having private sector jobs, people start getting a lot of money, trouble starts. And that's why the government has always, most communist governments, reluctant, you know, for people to have their own individual basis so they don't accumulate money to start, you know,
they can do a lot with that money that they accumulated in business. And,
exactly, start challenging
that undermines the government itself.
That's correct, undermine the government. Exactly, so that's the fear. So that's what they want to do, is slowly to see how it works out. You know, if people are going to be comfortable working in the private sector after so many years of sitting, you know, with government pay. The doctors, some of the doctors are paid less than the janitor, you know. But now Raul says, no, we got to start paying people according to their worth and their productivity. No more just, you know, because you are a driver, truck driver, we pay you more than a nurse in the hospital. We can't do that anymore. We got to pay people according to their qualification, so we can have the best people stay in Cuba and work, you know, which is not a bad idea, but it's yet to be seen. I know, you know, though this new, you know, changes going on in Cuba is attracting a lot of attention. You know, some people have said, well, Fidel Castro is against it, you know, but you know, if he was against it, his brother wouldn't have done it anyway. Even though he's sick, you know, like he's been in the hospital, he's no more in charge, he's not the president. But he's still the chairman of the Communist Party of Cuba.
And has that influence.
Yeah, and since he's the chairman of the Communist Party of Cuba, he's still the person in charge. Because you can't be president or anything in Cuba if you're not a member of the Communist Party, which he is the chairman. Okay, so even though his brother is the president, he can still remove.
Well, now we're talking about what about over the last couple of minutes? What about the United States' relationship with Cuba? I think we do we see any improvements in that?
Since President Obama came to office, you know, he has done some things to relax, you know, some of those. Now Americans can go and visit, you know, their relatives, you know, in Cuba. And you know, you have a lot of Cubans living in Miami and all some of these places who we are not allowed to even go there. Now they can, you know, and other Americans are allowed to go to Cuba now. They allow more people to send money to Cuba, which, you know, before there was a very big, you know, obstacle to doing that. So more money going to Cuba now, more people visiting Cuba now, you know. So that's the little openings that Obama has done. But what is, a lot of people are calling for the embargo to end, which is supposed to, because most of the countries that, you know, broke off relations with Cuba before, particularly in Latin America, all of them have renewed diplomatic relations, all of them.
And so we still refuse to trade with Cuba, is that what?
That's correct, we are still refusing.
Even though the rest of the world appears to be trading with Cuba.
Exactly, you know, we refuse to trade with them.
Now, what's the major reason for that, though, Dr. LMadu3?
It's still, I don't think any of the presidents has the political will to say, hey, let's end this here. You know, they go halfway and they stop. You know, when Carter came in, he made some noises about ending it, then he stopped. Obama's coming now, made some noises, but still trading very slowly.
Will it be to our advantage or to Cuba's advantage for us to do that? I mean, who would win?
It will be to both sides' advantage, because what people don't understand, the more this embargo stays on, the more really indirectly we are propping up the Castro regime. Because whatever is happening in Cuba, even if people are starving, oh, Raul will say, hey, it's those people in Washington. That's why you don't have food, because of this embargo. We can't import anything. Yeah, so if we had allowed, you know, trade to continue, I doubt if the Castro and his brother would be in power today, because people have been seeing a lot and agitating. But since we just closed the island off, Every problem there is who? Is Americans. Every problem is Americans.
That's why we have such bad reputation.
Exactly. If there's no cars running in Cuba, oh, it's America, even though we are not responsible. Yeah, if somebody doesn't have a house, oh, it's Americans. That's why we don't have cement to build house. You know, all those complaints. Yeah, so they're using that embargo to keep power.
And of course, Dr. Madu, we have to stop, as you know, at this particular point, but I certainly thank you. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.